My name is Nancy. I am a 56-year-old company employee, holding the position of section chief. 20 years ago, I married a man named Jason, and we have a daughter. Our daughter, Tracy, is actually Jason's stepdaughter, and became my daughter when she was 12 years old. She's been a wonderful child, and I've raised her as my own. Tracy is 32 years old now, and is planning to marry her partner of 8 years soon. While I'm thrilled about her upcoming wedding, I also feel a sense of loneliness knowing she'll be leaving our home. Tracy is truly a pride and joy, calling her biological mother who passed away, Mother, and addressing me as Mom. On the other hand, I want to talk about how my self-centered husband, Jason, has brought up the topic of divorce at the same time as Tracy's wedding. 20 years ago, when I was invited to a drinking party with colleagues from the company where I still work, I found myself smitten by a man at the neighboring table. After enthusiastic approaches, we started dating. While I hadn't intended to remain single for life, the lack of opportunities for romance after a major heartbreak made this newfound love a welcome change. I had heard that my husband had a daughter in elementary school, but it wasn't until one day when he brought Tracy along on a date that I met her for the first time. Tracy, fair-skinned and slender, had a very beautiful face, but her clothes were worn out and she was wearing clothes that were too small. Her hairstyle also seemed like she had cut it herself. When I discreetly told my husband, "You should pay more attention to your daughter's appearance," he replied,
"As a single father, I've been struggling just to make ends meet, let alone worry about appearances."
I changed our plans for the date and took Tracy shopping for clothes at the department store and to the hair salon. Tracy was tearfully happy, and her reaction deeply touched me. When I suggested to my husband that we start bringing Tracy along on our dates, before he could respond, Tracy eagerly said,
"Yes."
With a smile. Her overwhelming cuteness made everyone feel happy, I believe. And less than 6 months into our relationship, I started going to my husband and Tracy's house, and began taking care of household chores. Then, during dinner with the three of us, Tracy said,
"I wish Nancy could be my mom."
I was taken aback as I hadn't been thinking about marriage, but after my husband said,
"So, please become a part of our family,"
and both Tracy and him lowered their heads, I felt it was natural to become a family with them. I decided to become part of the family and said, "Yes, please include me as a member of the family," lowering my head. From that weekend, we started living together, and half a year later, I married my husband, officially becoming Tracy's mother and my husband's wife. Tracy quickly started calling me Mom, and actively helped with household chores, which was a great relief. I tried to avoid overtime work as much as possible, minimizing the time Tracy spent alone and cherishing the time we spent together. One day, my husband showed his true colors. He came home looking tired and immediately began muttering complaints.
"Why aren't the curtains properly closed?"
He grumbled about the curtains being slightly open, and
"The lunchbox dishes are always the same, and it's putting me off my appetite."
He complained about trivial matters. I was surprised by this change in behavior and watched silently for a while. He started getting more agitated.
"Why you are being silent? It's so gloomy even though I have come home,"
he accused me. Tracy started crying and hid behind me. "Hey, what's gotten into you today? Making a big deal out of such small things and ruining the atmosphere. It's all because of you, isn't it?" I said. He came into the kitchen where we were and threw the pot with the dishes Tracy and I had made into the sink.
"Besides, You're not good at cooking. You have a limited repertoire. And you keep serving the same stuff.
He said. It's true that I'm a career-oriented person, so I rarely cooked when I lived alone, and cooking might not be my forte. However, I would discuss with Tracy before bed what to make the next day and decide by looking at recipes on an app, trying to choose something I hadn't made before. So I don't intend to serve similar dishes every day, but I apologize if I'm not good at cooking. That's true. I said. If you have any grievances against me, you should tell me. His complaints seemed to be.
Before marriage, I could spend money freely. But now it's on an allowance system. I used to be able to drink as much as I wanted, but now it's restricted.
I told him that. I believed a monthly allowance of $450, excluding money for hobbies like tea, coffee, and cigarettes used during work, wasn't a small amount. As for alcohol, I informed him that after a health check showed abnormal liver levels, the doctor advised reducing or quitting drinking. However, my husband's face remained filled with anger. He threw the pot containing soup into the sink and stormed out of the house. I was stunned, and Tracy started crying, saying,
Dad has always been like this. I'm sorry for being silent.
When I calmed Tracy down and listened, it seemed that my husband used to leave Tracy alone when we went out on dates. My husband never spent money for Tracy. For example, when Tracy said,
I want you to buy me new clothes because mine don't fit anymore,
my husband would respond with,
We're tight on money right now.
And hesitated to buy them. Tracy had been receiving hand-me-downs from neighbors to help her out. She expressed appreciation for me selecting clothes together with her. Tracy seemed happy, thinking my husband had become kinder since I came into the picture, but she appeared disappointed upon realizing his true character had always been there, beneath the surface. Tracy asked me tearfully,
Mom, are you and Dad going to divorce? Are you going to leave?
I hugged Tracy and reassured her, saying, The time I'll be away from you is when you get married. Once you become someone's wife, we won't live together even if we wanted to, right? Tracy responded with gratitude, saying,
Thank you, Mom,
and hugged me tightly. That day, we had dinner together at a family restaurant, took a bath together, and slept in the same bed. In the middle of the night, when my husband returned home and couldn't find me in the bedroom, he checked Tracy's room and found us sleeping together. I pretended to be asleep. The next morning, I served breakfast to my husband and Tracy as usual, and we engaged in conversation. My husband seemed remorseful at first, but as we talked, he gradually reverted to his old self. As we were about to leave, he apologized to me, saying,
I'm sorry about yesterday.
I hoped that with this apology, whatever burden he had been carrying in his heart would dissipate, and we could return to a happy and fulfilling life together. From that day on, we continued to live in harmony as we did before, but there were occasional days when my husband's behavior would drastically change, turning him into a different person. Each time, he would apologize once he calmed down, but over the years, the frequency of his apologies decreased. Instead, he started going out drinking more often, and he began to demand additional pocket money from me. One day during such times, a major incident occurred. While I was taking a bath, Tracy, who had entered adolescence, and my husband got into an argument. When I emerged from the bath, the curtains were torn, the sofa was overturned, and it seemed as if a typhoon had swept through the house. I panicked and searched every room and even the bathroom, calling out, "Where's Tracy? Tracy? Where are you, Tracy?" But Tracy was nowhere to be found. I rushed to the front door to check if Tracy's shoes were there, but they were missing. That made me believe she had left the house. Turning to my husband, I asked, "Where's Tracy? Did she leave?" He replied,
"She was being insolent, so I chased her. Then she left."
Grabbing my phone and wallet, I headed outside to search for Tracy. Calling out Tracy's name while I was looking for, but she was nowhere to be found. Just as I attempted to call Tracy on my phone, I received a call from her. She informed me that she was at the police station, so I made my way there immediately. Tracy was sitting on a bench outside the entrance of the police station, with an officer talking to her. I approached Tracy and asked, "What happened?" The officer suggested we discuss it inside, so I put my arm around Tracy's shoulder and followed the officer inside. I heard the story from the officer. Tracy had apparently run to the police station herself to escape from her father, who was chasing her after causing a commotion at home. It seems that Tracy had run to the police station several times before, back when she was in elementary school, and she remembered being told that if something happened, she should run to the police station. The reason for the argument with her father was that he told her she didn't need to go to high school and should just work instead. Tracy is already in her third year of junior high school. By this age, she said she didn't want to think of her father as her father anymore. Apparently, since she was young, whenever he was in a bad mood, he would take it out on Tracy, even speaking ill of her deceased grandmother. He would frequently say things like,
"I didn't need a child like you,"
which made Tracy feel unwanted since childhood. I learned about Tracy's childhood for the first time and couldn't help but feel sad and shed tears. It seems that Tracy's discontent, fueled by her father's words forbidding her from going to high school, exploded and expressed the anger she had been feeling and harboring since childhood. It appeared that her father, who disliked being challenged, became angry. The officer expressed concern about letting her go home as is, but Tracy insisted.
"I need to go home because I have school."
She was adamant that she hadn't done anything wrong, so she wouldn't run away, and she would go to the police station as many times as necessary. The officer said he would talk to her father and escorted us home. After warning my husband, the officer said,
"It's mandatory. So we'll also contact Child Protective Services. Please cooperate promptly when a CPS staff arrives."
With that, he left. Since my husband left silently to drink again, Tracy and I cleaned up the room. Tracy, still angry, muttered,
"He's so emotionally immature to do something like this."
I suggested, "Tracy, should we leave this house together?" She shook her head and said,
"I can't leave until I get back at him."
Then she burst into tears, saying,
"I'll tear him apart and throw him away."
If I'm being honest, I don't have any affection left for my husband. His verbal abuse towards me has increased, even though he doesn't resort to physical violence. For instance, he makes snide remarks like,
"So, now that you're some big shot at work, you slack off on house chores. If it weren't for the kids, I wouldn't have married a loser like you."
Initially, he used to call me Nancy, but now he refers to me as you or hey. He frequently calls me names like ugly, arrogant woman, or old hag. He threatened to sue me if I took Tracy with me when leaving, so I felt trapped, unable to divorce or even separate. Tracy insists that leaving on our own would be running away and giving in to his desires, so we're left with no choice but to endure this tense atmosphere. A few days later, 2 child welfare workers visited our home and spoke with my husband. He said,
"This is just discipline. Where are the parents who don't think their daughter is cute? She's just exaggerating."
Despite his remarks, the child welfare workers said they would periodically check in to hear about our daughter's well-being and left. Upon hearing the child welfare workers mention the possibility of arrests, my husband seemed intimidated, but he started speaking more gently to Tracy, who continued to ignore him. Later on, Tracy entered the high school she had hoped for, graduated, and went on to university. After graduating from university, she joined the company where I work. Tracy expressed that she had admired me since childhood and wanted to join the same company. I had been promoted to manager, and Tracy believed.
I thought your company is a workplace where women could work on equal terms with men.
I thought Tracy would move out when she got a job, but she said she would commute from home. Then, Tracy suggested,
Why not stop managing his salary and return it all?
I thought, Tracy has graduated from university, so why not? I shared this sentiment with my husband. He seemed delighted at the prospect of having discretionary funds and eagerly urged,
"Return it. Return it."
So, I handed over his checkbook and card. We decided that my husband would cover utilities, I would cover groceries, and Tracy would contribute to rent, splitting it 3 ways. From that day on, my husband frequented bars, bought his own alcohol and snacks, and helped himself, gradually turning our relationship into one resembling roommates. Though household chores were handled by me and Tracy, he began referring to me as the maid, instead of using my name or addressing me with respect. He even refused meals we prepared, claiming they had little taste and saying,
"I'll buy my own food since I don't need yours."
So I stopped cooking for him altogether. Despite becoming the household maid, my husband continued to hurl verbal abuse at me without relent. 8 years later, Tracy came to the house with Tom, who had joined the company at the same time as her. Surprisingly, they had been dating since they started working together, which was news to me as it had never been rumored. They confessed that they were planning to get married, which truly surprised me. Tom is the superstar employee in Tracy's department. While there were rumors that he never showed interest in women, despite many women pursuing him, Tracy's presence meant he had no interest in others. Tracy was deeply moved by Tom's unwavering love for her over the past 8 years. Tracy expressed,
I used to have trust issues with men because of Dad. He patiently waited for 8 years until he proposed. It's disrespectful to him, and I feel guilty. Men like Dad are rare.
She smiled at him happily as she spoke. I assured her, I may have made mistakes in choosing a husband, but Tom is sincere. Tracy, you deserve to be happy. Tracy then surprised me with a proposition.
I feel like I'll be the only one happy. Mom, would you consider living with us after I get married? It's Tom's suggestion. What do you think?
However, I politely declined the offer, intending to divorce my husband and live alone once Tracy got married. I conveyed my sincere wish for them to enjoy their newlywed life. Tracy later asked me,
Today, I'm going to tell him about our marriage plans. Would you, Mom, also be there?
I readily agreed, saying, Of course, I'd be happy to. Tracy messaged my husband, saying,
I have something to discuss today, so please come home early.
My husband promptly replied.
Got it.
Then Tracy turned to me and asked,
Mom, are you really going to get a divorce?
I responded, Huh? Are you worried about leaving Dad alone? Tracy shook her head vigorously. After expressing her full support for the divorce, Tracy mentioned,
There are 2 things I want to tell you.
First, she received a call from the hospital informing her about Dad's diabetes, as he hadn't been keeping his appointments. Second, she disclosed Dad's infidelity. I was already aware of both issues and even knew who he was cheating with. It seemed Tracy had been gathering information through a private investigator, intending to use it to demand compensation and retaliate against Dad.
I don't want to leave Mom empty-handed. Even though you endured and protected me despite facing harassment from him all this time.
However, I assured her, just being able to divorce is enough. Tracy still remembered saying that she would retaliate against my husband and leave him in tatters when she was young. I told Tracy that she should inform my husband about his illness and the need for regular hospital visits, fearing she might regret not knowing in case something happened. Tracy then revealed,
He made Mother, who was frail, do housework and childcare, which led to her early death. Even when she had a fever, she took care of me. That's why Mother.
She trailed off, looking down. I had only heard that Dad's ex-wife died of an illness, and this was the first time Tracy shared these details with me. Considering my experiences with my husband and knowing Tracy's feelings toward him since childhood, I understood her deep resentment. Though I couldn't find the words, I went to Tracy, embracing her in silence. Tom seems to have heard everything from Tracy. Tom said,
I will never make Tracy cry. And even if we have children, I will continue to love both Tracy and our child.
Tears welled up in Tom's eyes, and behind those eyes, sincerity and seriousness were evident. Tracy felt truly fortunate to have met such a good person. Therefore, even more so, I didn't want Tracy to harbor feelings of hatred towards others. It's a waste to live hating others when you're happy. Live your life thinking only about being happy without a single cloud. Because God will surely give punishment to those who do wrong. Right? Tom looked at Tracy and nodded, and seeing that, Tracy said,
Yeah, I understand.
Tonight, Tom's purpose was to report to me and seek forgiveness, so he said he would come back to greet my husband later. That night, as soon as my husband came home,
I had something to do. What's this about Tracy? Spit it out already.
Perhaps it was because he had to cut short his errand that he was in a bad mood. After Tracy sighed, she told my husband about getting married. In response, without even saying, "Congratulations," to Tracy, my husband turned to me and said,
Hey, if Tracy is getting married, you're no longer needed, so let's get divorced. Even though she's your daughter, she's a stranger. Good job, housekeeper. If you need the divorce papers, they're at the top of the cupboard. See ya.
With that, my husband left the house, looking pleased. Following my husband's words, there was indeed a divorce paper in the top drawer, so I took it out and signed it in front of Tracy.
I forgot to tell him to go to the hospital. Mom, what are we going to do now?
I told Tracy that we would live together until she got married and explained what I would do next.
Mom, you've been through a lot with Dad, haven't you?
Tracy agreed with my decision. I told Tracy that we should find a new place to live right away, and Tracy said,
"Yeah, that's right,"
and started finding some properties on her smartphone. The next day, even though both Tracy and I had work, we managed to take a day off, submitted the divorce papers at the city hall, and visited real estate agents. Eventually, I decided to buy a condominium. Until I could move into the condominium, we rented a place where we could move our belongings. It took a few days, but we managed to move our belongings into the old apartment. Tracy explored the rooms like a liberated child, saying,
"It's old and might be haunted, but it feels cozy."
Tracy asked,
"When will you move into the condo?"
So I told her it would be possible in about 2 months. She seemed excited, saying,
"That condo was lovely. I'm really looking forward to it."
I completely forgot to inform my ex-husband about the divorce being finalized and our move before calling him. Before calling my ex-husband, I first dialed the most annoying person I could think of, who happened to be the husband of my husband's mistress. He knew about my husband's low income, so he demanded,
"Your husband and my wife are having an affair, so you should pay me compensation."
At first, I wondered how he found out and why he came to my workplace. After being stopped by security, I was called to talk to him, and that's when I found out who my husband's mistress was. The mistress's husband didn't seem angry about the affair, rather, he appeared to be motivated by money, demanding,
"If you don't want your husband's affairs to be disclosed at work, pay up."
I asked to tell my ex-husband to handle it, but he threatened to harm my ex-husband if I didn't pay up. The security and employees at work warned him that if he came back for anything other than work, they'd involve the police. Since then, he's been calling me every day. I kept saying every time that I haven't heard the facts because my husband hasn't come home yet. And then I hung up. Perhaps he thinks I'll contact the police if he comes to the house. I finally called the irritating guy and told him, "We're divorced, so get your compensation from my ex-husband. And if you call me again from today onwards, I'll involve the police." Reluctantly, he agreed. Afterward, I told my ex-husband that the divorce was finalized and that I had moved.
"Oh, so the divorce is finally done. You'll live lonely."
I smiled and replied, "Finally, I have no reason to endure anymore. Your affair partner's husband seemed to be looking for you, so I thought. He's big and looks scary. I even gave him the address where your affair partner frequently visits, and I also mentioned the name of your workplace. Dealing with someone who lacks common sense enough to come to the office is quite a hassle. Good luck." My ex-husband, with a trembling voice, said,
"Huh? You knew? Why did you have to say it? Her husband is so dangerous."
Then, I heard the angry voice of the affair partner followed by my ex-husband's voice trying to calm her down. So, I said, "Well, best of luck," and hung up. Afterward, my ex-husband contacted me several times. He mentioned he couldn't reach Tracy, so I informed him. Tracy said she's cutting ties with you and me after our divorce. Furthermore, my ex-husband was supposed to go to the diabetes clinic as Tracy messaged him, but he didn't go and was worried about his deteriorating health affecting his work. He then asked me to take care of him, and I decided this would be our last conversation. When I didn't respond, my ex-husband misunderstood, thinking I was concerned about the affair partner. He chuckled.
"Oh, don't worry. I settled things with money and broke up with the woman."
I finally said the words I had wanted to say for a long time, then hung up, blocked his calls, and haven't seen him since. Guess what I said to him? I said, "You wouldn't want to live with someone like me, who's ugly and can't cook, would you? Even if you were offered to come as a housekeeper, I wouldn't want to see you again. Besides, someone like you, with fat and no hair, is not my type." Afterward, our daughter Tracy got married to Tom and they are living happily. It's a pleasure to have them visit me about once a week.